Greetings and welcome to Ghost Stories of Washington, Chapter 6, Sea Lore, Part 1. The Haunted Sea King, Phantom on Pier 70, Spirits on Board, and Photo Not Available. Oh my word, are we going to have fun with sea lore? Alright, hopefully you're excited. We've got this chapter and one more chapter after this. I will be posting in my community tab soon what we will have available coming up in our new series. We'll let the community decide in the poll that I put up soon on my YouTube community tab. So make sure you place your vote. And by the end of this month, June, we'll make a determination of which will be our next Ghost Stories series. So let's get into Chapter 6, next to the last chapter in this book. Sea lore is our topic for this one. There are not as many instances of ocean-going tragedies on the Pacific as there are on the Atlantic. Even so, the West Coast is certainly not immune to shipwrecks, nor is it free of ghosts that inevitably manifest as a consequence of maritime disasters. The following are a few of the ghost stories connected to Washington's shores and the seas beyond. In our first short story here, The Haunted Sea King. One of the most bizarre Washington sea tales began in San Francisco, just after the earthquake in the spring of 1906. No one has ever been able to come up with an accurate count of those killed by the quake and the fires it triggered. Many of the bodies simply disintegrated or became inextricably tangled up with the debris. During the rebuilding process, tons and tons of twisted materials were hauled to the shipyards and stockpiled. City planners hoped that ships dropping off cargo at the San Francisco Bay could take on some of the detritus as ballast to balance their vessels before heading out for the next port on their journey. The Sea King was just a ship. She had delivered a heavy load of wood for the use in San Francisco's reconstruction, and to keep the vessel balanced once the lumber was offloaded, took on an equal amount of ballast that had been set aside for that purpose. After her stop at San Francisco, the Sea King steamed north to Seattle, where the ballast was unloaded in preparation for the next load of cargo. As the dock workers shoveled out the ship's hold, they were horrified to discover bones mixed in among the rubble that had been used to weigh down the Sea King. Those who worked on, even near the sea, tend to be a superstitious lot, and finding human skeletons from the earthquake scattered throughout the ballast was more than enough to push most of these men over the edge. Even though there had been no unusual events during the voyage from San Francisco to Seattle, word soon spread that the ship was cursed. Soon the sailors swore they could hear groans, and others unexpected noises coming from the hold area of the vessel. Despite being badly haunted from that point on, the Sea King had a long career up and down the West Coast, making many more voyages before being retired to the boneyard. And our next very short story is Phantom on Pier 70. One rather whimsical piece of local folklore has it that handsome young captain and his clipper ship appear out of a highly localized shroud of fog or mist near Seattle's Pier 70. The twist in this ghost story is that the man and his vessel are only visible to those who are in the throes of despair. He speaks to everyone who sees the ship, encouraging the living to persevere and assuring them that their fortunes will improve. His visits are prophetic because the luck of the dejected witnesses inevitably improves. This entity and his ship are especially interesting because, judging from the detailed reports given, they appear solid and lifelike to the person who sees them, and yet remain invisible to everyone else. Spirits on board. The equator is now permanently docked at Everett, some 25 miles up the coast from Seattle. The beautiful old schooner serves as a museum and, as might be expected of a ship that is more than 100 years old, it is haunted. The identities of the two ghostly presences are, however, rather unexpected. Both Robert Louis Stevenson and King Kalakaua of Hawaii made themselves known to participants in a seance on board the ship. In addition, ghost lights are frequently seen floating above the deck. In our next short story, photo not available, in our final of the 4 in this part of our chapter. Photo not available. In 1949, Frank Nickerson of Seattle earned his living crewing for a local shipping company. Being an outgoing sort, he enjoyed a pleasant relationship with almost all of his co-workers. Rarely, however, did he actually become friends with the other men. A young man named Donald proved to be an exception to this rule. Frank was so taken by Donald that he invited the newcomer to enjoy a home-cooked meal. As it turned out, Frank's wife, whose name, owing to the era in which this story was reported, has been recorded only as Mrs. Frank Nickerson, liked the youngster just as much as her husband did. As a result, Donald was a frequent dinner guest at the Nickersons' home. Mrs. Nickerson prided herself on her ability as an amateur photographer. During one of Donald's visits, she suggested that she take his picture. Donald laughed and told her that no one could take a picture of him. The woman understood the youth to mean that no one could take a good picture of him, and immediately accepted his words as a challenge to her skills with a camera. "No," Donald declared, in an attempt to clarify the misunderstanding. "No one can take my picture. There will be nothing on the film." Nevertheless, Mrs. Nickerson set about trying to prove her young friend wrong. After taking 2 pictures, each of her husband and of Donald, she put the camera away. Moments later, Donald left the Nickersons' house, somewhat confused by what had just occurred in their home. The couple tidied up from the meal and set about spending the evening alone. A few days later, Frank reported that Donald seemed to be avoiding him at work. He made this observation on the same day that Mrs. Nickerson picked up her film from the developer. She was extremely interested in seeing the results of her photography session during the evening of Donald's visit. Although she had taken the young man's picture twice, both times occurring merely seconds after she had taken photos of her husband, there were no pictures of Donald to be found. She checked the strips of negatives and discovered that the 2 shots on the roll immediately following the portraits of Frank were completely blank. Donald, it would seem, had been correct. No one could take his picture. What could account for this seeming impossibility could be Donald have been a temporary visitor from a previous time, a man who was taken from his earthly plane too soon and had therefore returned as a ghost to enjoy what he had missed as a man. We can never know for certain, but this is not the only Washington tale of an apparently living creature that could not be photographed. Many miles inland, at a Turnbull National Wildlife Refuge, south of Spokane near Cheney, Jack and Catherine Healy and their two sons were enjoying an outing. The little boys found a snake, named it Slinky, and decided it would make a wonderful pet. Unfortunately, their parents disagreed. All that would be allowed was a photograph of their father holding the snake. Catherine quickly snapped the pose. Jack put the snake down, and the family carried on with their activities. Some days later, they were reviewing the pictures they'd taken on the trip. They were, for the most part, pleased with the way the roll had turned out. One shot, however, of that of Jack Healy holding the snake had them all puzzled. Although the shot was perfectly posed and focused, close examination of the photo revealed that Jack's hands were completely empty. Hopefully you enjoyed these ghost stories of Washington, and I hope you enjoyed this chapter. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ghost Stories of Washington. Until then, take care and be wary. You might be amongst ghosts unawares. Bye for now. Take care. We'll see you on the flip side. Bye. I'm waving goodbye to you. Can you see my hand? It's fading in and out. Bye for now. Take care and have a wonderful and blessed night.